All right, what's up, guys? Welcome in. Beautiful day in the capital city as we get ready for South Carolina versus Vanderbilt, which is exactly what we are going to preview today with Chris and I's final preview of the Gamecocks and Commodores coming up this Saturday night, Williams-Brice Stadium. Already a big game feel to this one as we get ready for it, and we're going to break it all down here in a moment. But first, let me tell you about our friend Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, our presenting sponsor of this show, actually for several years now. We've been telling you, ClintHammond.com. We've been telling you, give him a call, 803-422-6797. And we've been telling you his NMLS number is 71597 because we have to tell you that part. But Clint is a guy who, if you are in the market for a home or you've even thought about home ownership, he's going to make the entire process, which can be a little bit daunting at times, be very simple, can answer all your questions, can get you ready for all the unforeseen things that you're not even thinking about, just in terms of, hey, how much home can I afford? What does that monthly payment look like? How much do I need for a down payment? And all the other things that you're not even thinking about. Plus, big-time Gamecock, of course, that's a bonus, and big supporter of this show and GamecockCentral.com as well. So as we always tell you, just hit up our guy Clint if home ownership is something you see in your future.
Yep, and before we get rolling into game analysis, Wes, for the big one this weekend, we'll also tell folks about the family-owned business over at Ferry Chevrolet. That's right there in Orangeburg, conveniently located between Columbia and Charleston. FerryChevrolet.com. That's F-A-I-R-E-Y, FerryChevrolet.com, where you can give those guys a call, 803-937-4531. Led by a fourth-generation dealer in Joseph Ferry. It's a business that started right here in the Palmetto State, over in St. Matthews, home of Alshon Jeffrey, of course. Been serving the community since 1926. Like I said, now in Orangeburg, convenient location. So if you're around the area, even if you're in Columbia, if you're in Charleston, worth going over there to check them out because they're local, trustworthy, always transparent, and they still operate with principles like honesty, integrity, and give you a handshake on your way out too. So head on over to ferrychevrolet.com, check out their inventory, get in touch, new, used vehicle. If you're a South Carolina fan out there looking for one, make sure you give them an opportunity to earn your business, support those that support us here on the show. That's ferrychevrolet.com.
Chris, I'm excited about this one, man. It has been kind of bubbling up all week. I said Tuesday. This already feels like a big game. I know typically you do not circle South Carolina versus Vandy as being that, maybe unless you're Diego Pavia, who for whatever reason has had this thing circled since the offseason. Still don't quite understand that, other than just maybe the competitor in him knowing that South Carolina was really one of the few teams that completely shut down that Vanderbilt offense last year and really held Pavia in check. As we know, a little bit different Vandy team, a little bit different looking South Carolina defense, South Carolina offense trying to get going. And this one has some juice, man. Like it really does have a big game feel. You have stuff online, Gamecock Twitter, Vanderbilt Twitter kind of going at it. I'm excited, man. Another sellout. I think it's going to be fun. This is why you're in the SEC, man. There's going to be a grind. There may be bigger name schools that you're going to certainly have to face later on in this schedule. But if you're going to navigate this thing, man, if you're going to put yourself in the position every South Carolina fan wants to be at the end of the year, which is when that college football playoff show comes on, that you have a chance to be named, you got to navigate games like this. And Vanderbilt, frankly, is coming in for blood. Like they're coming in to win this game.
They are. They have put a lot of emphasis on this game, Wes. I think a lot of people online are talking about it, dating back to Pavia's comments. I tend to think, not to put words in his mouth, but I do think exactly what you said, the fact that really that was probably his worst game of the year last year, Wes. Certainly if you look at the passing statistics, the fact that he was, banged up in that game, got banged up in that game, it was probably Vanderbilt's worst offensive performance of the year. I think those guys, Pavia, Clark Lee, who played at Vandy and is now their head coach leading those guys, I think the way that they performed in that game, and to give South Carolina credit, they were the reason that Vanderbilt played that way in the game, I think left a bad taste in their mouth. There's been a lot of emphasis on that just among South Carolina fans and really local national media, right? Talking about Vandy, what they're saying, the way they're breaking down their huddles in practice. Beneath the surface, Wes, quieter on the South Carolina end because they're kind of taking the approach of, we're just going to go play this game, and don't take that to mean Vanderbilt's not on their radar. Shane Beamer was effusive in his praise the other day of Vanderbilt at his weekly press conference on Tuesday. I think he'll have the same today to say tonight. Carolina calls 7 o'clock. Check it out on the game on the radio if you want to listen to it. We'll have coverage of those comments on Gamecock Central. But, I mean, he went into detail about the roster and Diego Pavia and the respect he has for him. South Carolina, I think, Wes, even though they're sitting here at 2-0, they don't have the best taste in their mouth either. They know the importance of this game. They know that particularly on the offensive side of the ball, they have not played up to the standard that they want to play to in 2025. So this game has some juice from that standpoint, but it's also a meaningful game because, like you just said, you've got a couple of teams who have big goals this year and have difficult schedules, both of them. This is one of those games you circle in the early part of the season. It's not a must win, not a gotta have it. Those are kind of more rare in the year 2025 with an expanded college football playoff, right? Don't have to think about, hey, you've got to win the conference to make the playoff. It's expanded. South Carolina was on the cut line. Vanderbilt felt like last year they beat Bama. They were close against LSU. They were very close against Texas. They're trying to get over that hump. So while it's not a must-have, it's one that makes your outlook a lot better if you can get it in the early part of the season as you continue rolling through SEC play.
Yeah, a lot of different things at play here as you start to dive into the actual game, other than, a battle of two of the more interesting quarterbacks in the league. Of course, with Pavia on one side, Lenora Sellers on the other. A lot of different facets that I think are going to, I would say, be key factors in the game. Before we forget about it, before we get too far ahead, let's keep it focused on South Carolina in terms of the injury report. That's something that I think, even as you were watching that game against South Carolina State late into the night this past Saturday, my mind was already moving forward to what does this mean for SEC play starting next week, as you see guys just frankly dropping one after the other and not coming back into the game because of injuries. And as we know, you really can't always tell. Like sometimes you can tell, that. A lot of times, though, Chris, you can't tell right off the bat how bad an injury may be. So you're sitting there waiting. Is this going to be a long-term thing? Is it going to be a week-to-week thing? And I would say, so first of all, this show right here is sort of made to be the final preview for this game. So it's kind of made to be evergreen from now on Thursday to Friday to if you're, want to watch it or listen to it on Saturday leading up to the game. That's why we started doing this on Thursday. So you have basically 3 days you can listen for the preview of that game on Saturday. The reason I'm saying that is as of right now, we've only seen the Wednesday night sort of availability report, injury report from the SEC. We have several more reports to go on Thursday, later on today as we're recording and going live. You, of course, will hear from Shane Beamer at Carolina Calls. He may give you a little nugget here or there, or he may say, hey, look at the availability report tonight. Either way, have a Thursday report, you'll have a Friday report, and then you will have the big one, the 90 minutes before the game on Saturday report, where you have to designate basically out or available. So for South Carolina yesterday, Chris, my first maybe takeaway from the injury / availability report really was not even necessarily about who is on it. It was more about who is not on it, because you look at this long list of guys who have missed time in the last few weeks, Jalen Kilgore among them, JT Gear among them. Neither of those guys on the list. Josiah Thompson, not on the list, which in this case means they are expected to be available. So that was kind of your first piece of good news in terms of this thing. Again, as of Wednesday night, cornerback Judge Collier, tight end Brady Hunt, they are listed as doubtful, which means, in general, only about a 25% chance they will play. And then on the other end of that, defensive backs, Bakari Swain, Brandon Cisse, and Jaquel Hallman all listed as probable, which I think certainly is a positive there for South Carolina, considering the number of guys that came out of this game early last week and the number of guys that were already missing. Nobody would ever say this, Chris. I'm sure they were probably pretty conservative in terms of like not putting those guys back in the game. Like, you're going to be pretty precautionary with an FCS opponent, whether you admit that or not. So, all things considered, though, I thought this was a pretty good midweek report in terms of the guys that if you add up the guys who are available and the guys that are probable, it could have been much worse.
It could have been a lot worse. That's exactly what I was going to say. And I think a few questions in there, Wes. Number one, the guys that, so let's start here. Let me back up. The guys that are doubtful, like you said, we'll get 3 more injury reports, including on game day. It's hard for me to envision a guy going from doubtful to, he's playing. Brady Hunt, being one of the guys on that list, was the one that Shane Beamer seemed most concerned about. If you remember, when Judge Collier went out against Virginia Tech, there was some concern that thankfully ended up being unfounded. Legitimate concern, but just it turned out better than it could have been. But you got the sense that, Judge is definitely missing the SC State game and maybe a little bit more beyond that. We'll kind of see how that goes, right? Not as bad as it could have been. So seems unlikely those guys play, with them being doubtful earlier this week on Wednesday. Now, the guys that are probable, again, I'm sure the coaching staff's priority throughout the week will be trying to balance rest, recovery, rehab. Can you get them some practice time? Vakari Swain, Wes, during Joe DeCamillis's media availability this week, yesterday, I was going to say let it slip. I don't think there's any slip. He just said it's practicing, so you feel good about that. Not only is he probable and probably available for the game, but he's actually out there participating. That's a good thing. Jalen Kilgore not on the list, right? My question is, the guys that are probable, assuming they do definitely play, are there any limitations? If they're out there, well, they're 100% playing, but are they 75%? Are they 80%? Are they 85%? And what does that mean? Do you get any tweaks of any of these things in the game situation? Jalen Kilgore with the soft tissue, the hamstring injury earlier, missed the SC State game. Whatever's going on with Cisse, with Vakari Swain, do you have anything that maybe flashes up during the game that causes a little bit of a setback? So just something I think on Saturday night when we're watching to keep an eye on. Carolina built up a good bit of depth, as we know, coming into the season at corner and nickel. That's been tested early and often. Definitely a good thing to get these guys, at least the bulk of them, back to where they're going to be able to play. Missing Judge Collier, that's a blow. But this is a position where you've built up some depth. It's good to see those guys back on the probable or play list as we head into the game.
Yeah, and, assuming you got those guys back and assuming, they're not, limited too much like you're talking about, I think you feel pretty good, man, about where you are in the secondary, because you do have enough depth. You can withstand, a loss or two. What you really can't withstand is what kind of nobody can withstand, and that is just having injury after injury after injury at one particular spot. We've seen that over the years, and nobody wants to relive that. I think as we push it forward to this game itself, this is a Vanderbilt offense, as you have pointed out on some other shows. They do try to stretch the field on you. They will be willing. And as much as last year's Vandy team was kind of a methodical approach, they want to shorten the game. They want to, drain the play clock, make you execute on offense, make you be efficient on offense. And some of their big wins, they were kind of aggressive. It's kind of an iconic play now, the 4th and short, where they go play action, throw the ball down the field in the end zone against Alabama. And if you don't, so I feel like, Chris, the kind of interesting, I don't know if it's a dichotomy, but so Clark Lee manages the game like a defensive coach, and he wants to shorten things. He wants to put his focus on his defense. He wants to stay on the field. He's all about, let's get in third down, makeable situations, and then stay on the field. But a lot of defensive-minded coaches, when it comes time to make a play to win the game, they remain a little bit conservative. I feel like there's an acknowledgement there. Hey, we have to hang around in some games, especially last year, where maybe you're playing teams that don't have as much talent as you, or have more talent than you, I should say. But then when it's time to go win the game, you do have to be aggressive. Like, you have to take some chances. Now, will we see this team, and maybe there's evidence of this so far through 2 games, as they add more talent, as they have a more experienced team. We know they've brought in guys from the portal that are playing right away. Do they feel a little bit more like, hey, we don't have to be quite as smoke and mirrors. We don't have to be quite as stay on the field and pray that we can keep the opponent from having the football. We can be a little more aggressive. And they have been willing to throw 50-50 balls. I think that's why you have to circle that aspect going into this game, because we have seen South Carolina, frankly, be in great position on some 50-50 balls the first 2 weeks and just not make the plays. As Clayton White has said, hey, it's the life you chose. It's the life of a DV. Could have been a mailman, I think he said last week. Great quote, by the way. And going into this game, it's going to be some balls where you're in phase, the ball is in the air, and the difference in a chunk play and a first down versus Vandy now being in 2nd and 10 is going to be, do you make a play on the ball?
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm sure that Vanderbilt's offensive staff, Tim Beck, those guys are looking at, is that, you know, if you look back at the Virginia Tech game for the Gamecocks, they were in position on some balls, didn't make it happen. Sometimes they did, right? But that was one of the big talking points coming out of that game. You got to play the ball better. Shane Beamer talked about it in one of his last media availabilities. What can you do? Talked about it earlier this week. Play the ball better was his answer. There's not receivers through the first 2 games that have just been running past South Carolina's DBs. That would be more alarming. You're in position. You're in phase. Like you said, Wes, you got to go play the ball. And Vanderbilt, I saw a comment earlier. Somebody said they were 6-6. Don't act like they're a dynasty. Nobody's saying that. But is this a good football team who can beat you? 100%. If South Carolina plays offensively, especially like they have the first couple weeks, I don't think the game will go their way. So if you're projecting a win, I think you have to project that they're going to play better. I also think Vanderbilt is going to be better than Virginia Tech offensively. They're certainly going to be better than a MEAC team in SC State. The reasons for that, they've got a couple good backs. They got Diego Pavia, who, I mean, if you watch college football, you know what he's capable of. They've got a lot of experience. They felt like last year they weren't as good on the offensive line. They feel like they're better this year. Saw what they did against Virginia Tech. Down 20-10 at halftime, come back, run them out of their own stadium in the second half. Vandy didn't punt against Virginia Tech. They either scored a touchdown, field goal, or they turned the ball over twice, right? So that's another thing we'll get into in terms of keys. The point is, Wes, this is a team that can hurt you. If you don't play well, if you bring a C game, if you're South Carolina, this is a team that can beat you. There have been lots of Vanderbilt teams in the past where you can bring a C game and still walk out with a win. Point I'm trying to make, I don't think that's the case this time around. So Pavia, that offense, they do a lot of different things, a lot of eye candy before the snap. They will test you down the field. Trey Richardson, who's a D2 transfer, has been a really good player for them so far. They got Eli Stowers at tight end. This will present, I think, the biggest challenge South Carolina's faced. On the flip side, if you want to say, well, South Carolina's the biggest challenge Vanderbilt's faced, 100% agree, right? And that is one of the reasons why I think everybody's so intrigued by this matchup. Got to line it up, play it, and see how it turns out.
And I frankly I don't put a ton of stock in what's happened so far this year. I just don't. You know, could that be wrong? Yeah. Could Vandy come in and win this game? Of course. If they play up to their standard, they will be tough to beat. Carolina will have to play well. I don't put a ton of stock in the SC State. I know everybody wants to play the comparison game. How much with a very, very new look Virginia Tech team that had new schemes on offense, new schemes on defense, new players all over both sides of the ball. Vandy goes into that game with a little bit of tape. South Carolina had no tape going into that first game. You know, so I just, there's a reason why they say the transitive property does not apply to college football, because it just doesn't. So you can play the game of, you know, well, hey, they did this against them. They beat them by more than South Carolina did. You know, South Carolina also, you know, never trailed in that game, whereas Vandy's down early on and has to basically have a little gut check time before they come back and play well the rest of the way. Again, some of that was due to turnovers early on. I think the most concerning thing from just like a who is Vandy standpoint and the most impressive thing from Vanderbilt standpoint is the fact, man, that they didn't punt. Like whenever a team does not have to punt, to me, that tells me like, hey, they are executing at a pretty high level. Now you turn the ball over a couple times. Do you want to turn the ball over? No. Are turnovers just a fact of football that are going to happen? Especially if you're trying to put the ball in some tight windows from time to time and you're playing hard, trying to make extra yardage. Maybe a ball pops out. Nobody wants that to happen, but it is just a fact. So it is still very early. I think we do start to learn a lot about both teams this week. And another one of those areas, man, that I think is going to be key. You hear Joe DeCamillis talk about it in the Wednesday press conference. You hear Shane Beamer talk about it in the Tuesday press conference. We've all seen what Vakari Swain can do. We've all seen what the new look South Carolina special teams have done. They have been a weapon so far. You get your toughest special teams test this week in terms of another well-coached bunch on that side of the ball and another group that has return men that can hurt you, much like South Carolina has been able to hurt opponents so far.
Yeah, it's another just subplot and storyline and a very interesting game, and Shane Beamer was asked an interesting question on Tuesday, and that is, what do you think, basically, what do you think Vanderbilt will do in terms of handling punting to Vakari Swain, given what he's done in the first two games? How do you, as a coach with a special teams background, think about that? And I thought it was a very interesting and cool answer. It's just basically knowing Clark Lee and those guys and how they think and the competitors they are. I think they're going to say, hey, we're playing our game. If that means we're punting to your guy, then we're going to punt to him, and it's our job to go cover him. Let's line it up and see how it turns out, right? But, it is a question, for both of these teams. They both have guys that can hurt you. Beamer referenced Vanderbilt last year running a kickback, the opening kick, I think, in the Tennessee game. Schematically, they're sound. They emphasize it. They've got some guys that can hurt you. So can South Carolina, right? And Wes, again, it hasn't shown up yet because it hasn't needed to. But the kicking game for South Carolina, they've seemed to be happy with Mason Love. It's good to see William Joyce go hit. Yes, he missed a 45-yarder. He hit a 49-yarder against SC State. Is this a game that could come down to a kick on either side? That's a pressure-packed, longer kick. I think just another thing to think about. We haven't seen South Carolina have to handle that situation yet. Hey, maybe they go throughout the entire season somehow with it not being a question, but history shows at some point there's going to be some big kicks, and I think that's another unknown. Both of these teams still have, I think, a lot of unknowns because it's still just week 3.
Yeah, I think the kicking game at some point, like you're going to play too many close games, right? Like you're going to play way too many close games in order to have that kicking game not play a big factor. Now, is it just, hey, do you make your kicks throughout the course of a game and that sort of affects the score at the end? Or how many of these games literally come down to kind of that pressure-packed end of the game situation? And Chris, how many times is it where you have that, not that you want this to happen, but you have that little margin, you have that leeway where, you're kicking for the win, but if you miss, it's tied and you keep getting to play on versus, I think one of the toughest things in sports to do, man, is if you're a kicker, doesn't it seem like, and every team does this, man, doesn't it seem like if a team is driving for a tying or winning field goal, they get into field goal range and they're like, oh, we're in field goal range. We can't mess this up.
Let's
right?
shut it down. Yep.
They get more conservative because they're like, we'd be idiots to turn the ball over when we're already in field goal range. But then what ends up happening? Inevitably, your kicker ends up kicking plus or minus from the 30-yard line, like either a little bit in front of it or it's always right around the 30. And I think there's nothing harder in college ball than that poor kicker having to go out there when it's like a 1-point game or a 2-point game and you're trailing, and it's literally if I hit this, I mean, I'm not having to buy a drink for life versus I'm getting, yelled at on social media, and we'll just put it lightly like that. Like there's nothing more pressure packed in college ball. So you got to think, at least at some point this year. I've been listening to Josh Pate in the lead up, man. The SEC, like kind of that in terms of the compression of the top and the bottom, it's more tightened than ever. So Mississippi State is out here getting huge wins over top 25 college football playoff team from last year. So it's just week to week. You are going to have, it's ultimately going to come down to that. And who knows if you execute it or not,
Yeah. And that's one reason why, like, I don't know. I feel like we have given Vanderbilt a lot of praise. But I feel like we're going to be doing that most weeks this season, just because every team that South Carolina plays, for the most part, not all of them, almost all of them, you get the sense of like, hey, what do you think? I think Carolina's going to have to play pretty well to win, right? Like that's how it is, And honestly, man, if South Carolina were undefeated and had looked phenomenal the first couple weeks and was ranked number 5 and you feel great about the entire team, you probably are still sitting here going, all right, watch out for Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia. They got 30 or 40 seniors on that team. They upset Bama last year. They were in some other big games. They got most of the same guys back. The ones that they don't get back, they might have upgraded. They got Pavia. Like, that's the reason why it's not trying to sandbag. It's not pulling a Lou Holtz like he used to do sometimes. It's just pointing out that from week to week, as you said, everything is so much tighter, so much more compressed. And any given Saturday, man, most teams are capable of beating another team. So you got to be alert and on the lookout. And it's our job to break down, what the other team can bring to the field.
For sure. And so we talked about this earlier in the week, man, a little bit, but I'm curious, how much of this game are you now saying you're going to put on the shoulders of Lenore Sellers? And I know that's always, we talked about it, you're going to juggle, frankly, all season. How much do you run him? How much do you design run him? Dude, how much does the rest of the running game potentially open up just a little bit? Can you take a little bit of pressure? I think there's 2 ways to take pressure off of that offensive line. One, do you involve Sellers enough early on? Can Sellers get a couple of chunk runs, basically, to where it forces Vanderbilt to adjust a little bit and take him into account just a little bit more, to where that one hat on the front is a little bit more hesitant when you're running kind of that zone read look and you're handing it off. So can you get better in the more traditional run game because they're like, oh, this is a game they're going to let Sellers run? 2, can you stretch the defense vertically early on in this game? I think this is an important game. The funny thing is, dude, week 1, week 2, we have seen 2 completely different results from the quote-unquote script, right? The script comes out, you are perfect against VT to open the season. Like, the offense could not have looked any better than they did on drive 1 of the entire football season. And they could not have looked any worse than they did on the first couple of drives against SC State. So I think it's important to come out and, stretch them, kind of honestly horizontally hit some of the little tight end flat stuff that's been so good for you. If Hunt is not available, is Michael Smith ready to take on a bigger role, which I assumed he was going to be in a pretty big role to start the year anyway, frankly. Is he ready for that? I'd almost assume them throw a deep ball or 2 early, even if you don't hit it, just to remind them, hey, you've got to account for Harbor speed down the field. And then like maybe you can work back to the traditional running game if you can do some of these other things. I think Shula has on purpose been a little hard-headed in the just, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're going to get the ball to the backs, chip away. Eventually, it'll break through. But if you're not making first downs to stay on the field, you have no chance for that kind of second run of a drive, third run, fourth run of a drive to start to wear down the defense. Like you have to have enough success to stay on the field in the first place, which is why I think third down conversions really on both sides, but I'm more thinking about it. Carolina offense, Vandy defense, you got to convert at a much higher clip going into this game. But I'll be curious to see, man, is the game plan just a little bit different than what we've seen the first two games in terms of involving Sellers more as a runner himself?
Well, and that's a question I think for both teams is which quarterback can take over, put the game on their back. Both of these teams are at their best when they have their talents at quarterback take over a game. We've seen it with Sellers. I mean, how many of the iconic, frankly, plays from last year were Sellers doing something incredible, right? And there were a lot of other great plays last season. There have been some really good plays this season, but how many of them were Sellers escaping or Sellers on a designed run? I do think if we're having to estimate this thing, Wes, we see it opened up a little bit more. I think Carolina did not, even with the struggles in the SC State game, didn't feel like they were on the verge of losing the game where they felt like, all right, we just got to completely open this thing up and go kind of screw it mode and let's just start running 16. You've got to think that will be more of a part of the game plan going forward. And frankly, man, Sellers is at his best when he's just cutting it loose. And I don't think that means we need to root for some of the things that we've seen him do, which is, hey, it's third down, he's almost sacked, and then he escapes and makes something happen. We've said it over and over. You want to avoid that, right? Because even Lenore Sellers isn't getting out of that every time. But just generally, having 16 be 16 and do his thing, I don't think they've had to do that these first couple weeks. I think we'll see it more starting this weekend going forward. And that does add an element to the opposing defense that can be pretty tough to account for. And like you said, opens up everything else.
Yeah. Travis says, I don't think the script was designed to start at the 10-yard line. I mean, noted, Travis. And I've said more than anyone, I've been told that doesn't matter, that it's an excuse. I wasn't going into all the details on why that was in this case. But yes, I agree that, I mean, if you start 3 straight drives inside your own 20, like where you're backed up inside your own 10, typically that's not a recipe for good offense. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Chris, before we get moving too forward and then we close this thing down, let's go ahead and why don't we tell everybody about our friends at Palmetto Golf and Belts?
Yeah, Brandon Cohn and his online shop at Palmetto Golf and Belts, which is palmettogolfing.com. For you, if you're a golfer or for that golfer in your life, some amazing local gear, custom golf gloves, custom golf tees, custom golf towels, and the needlepoint belts. If you are a fan of wearing needlepoint belts or you've always thought, man, I'd like to pick one of those up. Maybe they're a little pricier other places. Brandon's over at palmettogolfing.com are just as well made, extremely well made, and more affordable. He's got a variety of designs with all his gear, the cross design. He's got a variety of colors, the palmetto moon and tree for the state of South Carolina, the blue, the garnet, if you want to rock it as a South Carolina fan. Go check it out, palmettogolfing.com, Palmetto Golf and Belts. The members over at GamecockCentral.com are loving it. A lot of good feedback on the Insiders Forum. He's always running specials over there as well. On his online shop, longtime Gamecock Central member, big South Carolina fan. So go support local business. That's Palmetto Golf and Belts, palmettogolfing.com.
And also our guy, Andy Luedecke at myperfectfranchise.net. Give Andy a call, 404-973-9901, or shoot him an email, Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Now, you may be saying, what does My Perfect Franchise do? And so basically, if you've been on the show before, if you've listened to the show before, you've heard us talk about Andy and his business. And so this is, if anyone out there listening has kind of thought about, hey, I don't want to kind of run this corporate rat race anymore. I want to diversify. I want to leave a legacy. I want to kind of build my own wealth, whether that is more of a true like this is job number one or more of a side hustle, maybe you've thought about those things, but you just don't know how to do it. That is what Andy's services are for. He is a franchise consultant and a franchise owner. He will help people find franchises that will fit their skill set, passions, and financial requirements. One of the best parts about it, other than all that freedom you may be able to find by owning your own business, is that his services are 100% free to you, and he is here to help you every single step of the way for the questions you may have about building that new business of yours. Again, 404-973-9901, or just shoot him an email, Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Andy, like many of the people we work with and our sponsors, I can tell you, absolutely loves what he does. Like, if you get this guy started talking about franchises and business ownership, you can tell, you can feel the passion that comes from him. So always like working with people that love what they do. And speaking of passion, man, Chris, another sellout at Williams-Brice Stadium this weekend. Night game at Williams-Brice Stadium this weekend. I think we're in store for a incredible atmosphere. It felt like, and I wasn't there. You know, we got the newborn, we got the 3-week-old at home. I'm watching the games early on this season, watching from home to be completely transparent. But I was following the buzz on social media, watching on TV, of course. I know you were there, man. Even for an out-of-conference home opener that was delayed 2.5 hours. It rained, it stormed, it lightened. It was buzzy last week. SEC play with the added drama that this one all of a sudden has. Maybe that's a factor in this game. There's something about Willie B at night. It's not just a made-up phenomenon online that people talk about. It is hard to come into that place and win football games for opponents.
Yeah, especially at night. And you're right, man. I've said, and a shout out to Gamecock Nation, I was legit shocked, basically, when I looked up, because you're kind of doing your thing for the game. Like, we're in the stadium, there's still a delay, trying to figure out what's going on. And you look up at kickoff, and everywhere is full. Upper decks are full in those circumstances. Not you're playing SC State at 7 o'clock. End of story. Like, you're playing SC State at 9-something o'clock after it's been storming, it's wet, it's been a long day, and people still showed up and showed out. So you kind of bring that forward, man, with the added drama, the added, South Carolina's still 2-0. They're still playing a 2-0 Vandy team. They're opening SEC play. I'm expecting a really good atmosphere too. Gonna have some big time recruits in town, Wes. I think it's gonna be a big atmosphere.
All right, so I gave my, if I had to just boil it down to one key, we know it's the thing about keys to victory, man. There's 20 keys that go into any game, maybe more if you really just dive into the little nuances of what goes on in a college football game. That's frankly why we love it, is all the different little things that can happen. But what about you, man? Is there a one single, just I circled this is a key, or this is a key matchup that you think could be a major factor on Saturday?
Man, I hate, because I feel like this one's so lazy and so obvious, but I am looking at turnovers, right? If you're thinking that this is going to be a close game, Vanderbilt's maybe not their one issue, but their main issue this year. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. Didn't punt against Virginia Tech. The only thing that slowed them down from scoring on any drive in that game was 2 of their first 3 drives, interception, fumble. Look at South Carolina. For all of the ugly that the offense has submitted so far, and some good fortune in there, and you think about the sack against Virginia Tech, they have not turned the ball over. And they've still been able to get some turnovers off of their opponents. For me, this has the feel of one of those games that if we look back at it, it's probably not going to be the team that loses the turnover battle that wins this football game. Maybe it's even, but you can't go out there and be -2, maybe even -1, and expect to go win this game against a solid team. So I almost feel like I need to give another one, Wes, because that's just, you could say win the turnover battle like every game, but I do think that's one of them. I think for South Carolina, how can you cage in Pavia? And I think that's going to be a huge point of emphasis for Vanderbilt with Lenora Sellers. But can you make him have to beat you from the standpoint of they're not lining up and getting 7 yards on an RPO and running the football effectively? It sounds backwards, but you want to try to make Pavia beat you while still slowing him down, right? You don't want it to be the other things where you went, man, Pavia didn't even have to have a big game and we still lost, that sounds backwards. I fully realize that, but last year that Vanderbilt team was on his shoulders a lot. South Carolina was able to force him into his worst passing game of the season. The only game of consequence aside from a big Alcorn State win where he didn't play very long. Did not throw a touchdown against the Gamecocks last year. Had the fumble on the strip sack. That's the type of night I think you need to try to make Pavia have.
We know that this is a different South Carolina defense than the one that was here last year. And, I thought they the interior guys, man, like in addition to the edge guys, like the interior guys, I felt like as that game progressed last year in Nashville, they were winning battles up front, man. Like they were getting after him. And Pavia was escaping. He was running around. But and there were a couple of plays where you just have to tip your cap. You're like, somehow he fit that ball in there. And I think there's a kind of interesting little battle within the game here, where we had Chris Lee on from Vandy Sports. I mean, they brought in several guys from the transfer portal on the offensive line. They feel like they're more talented there than they were before. As we know, Chris, as we've seen in Columbia, it's not as easy as just plug and play. And I know they feel like they've done pretty well in some areas in terms of O-line play to start the year. Man, I don't put a ton of stock in – I promise I'm getting to a point with this. I do not put a ton of stock in PFF, certain things, right? But I do like to use it as a guide. I like to say, all right, is there an area that just flashes, just hits you in the head in terms of how a team is graded? We know how poorly South Carolina fans feel like the South Carolina O-line has played. And I'm not saying they've played great. I don't think, once again, they've maybe played to what a lot of people are acting like right now. Dude, if you look at the entirety of the SEC on PFF so far through 2 games, let me make sure I have this right. I think I do. The lowest graded single individual thing for a team in the entire SEC right now is Vanderbilt pass blocking.
Oh.
So
interesting.
And so if you look at PFF, man, they grade everything. They have a grade for overall offense, passing, pass blocking, receiving, running, run blocking, defense, run defense, tackling, pass rushing, coverage, and special teams overall. So in all those categories for all 16 teams, the single lowest number on this entire chart is 37.3. It is so low that I feel like we need to check their math. Like, is that a typo? Because the next lowest number in terms of pass blocking grade from PFF is Auburn with 60.2, which actually 60 in PFF version is just average. Like that just means, you win some, you lose some. And so I don't know, man. I don't feel like there's much talk about, hey, Vandy can't protect the passer. I haven't heard that conversation a ton. Again, this is just a number on a screen, but for it to be that drastic, can Dylan Stewart, can Brian Thomas Jr., who I think has been phenomenal through 2 games, man. Brian Thomas Jr. has arguably been South Carolina's best player, in my opinion, through 2 games. He's been great. The interior guys have played pretty well, honestly, too. Can they keep that up now that we're in SEC play? Can they harass Pavia all night just like Kennard and TJ Sanders and Boogie and all those guys did last year? Muted.
I mean, I hadn't done that in a while. Whew.
Man.
We're a little, sorry. I went back and looked because that is such an eye-popping number. So Vandy's only given up 1 sack this year. Now, as we know, sacks are not always a measure of, like, if you got a lot of sacks that you've given up, bad. You're not necessarily playing phenomenally if you don't have a lot of sacks. So what that kind of indicates to me, Wes, is there's been pressure and Diego Pavia has been able to make it right. Kind of goes back to my point earlier. If you are pressuring Pavia all night, you're forcing him into some mistakes, some throwaways. If you're making life difficult, if you're throwing him off platform, he's going to make some plays. He's going to make some off platform, some off schedule plays. Can you limit them? One way you got to do that is to win those battles up front. So, yeah, I agree with you. Stewart is Stewart. We know he has potential to wreck the game. There's going to be a lot of attention on him. Obviously, Vanderbilt, when they're game planning, how many times has number 6 come up? And, hey, when we run this against that, what does that mean for number 6? How are we taking care of him? But Brian Thomas has looked – you used this term the other day. He's like a man possessed. Like, that's what he looks like. Can you keep coming along there? Can you get something from BT, from Gear, from these other guys? Can you get some interior, some of your interior defensive linemen making some things happen and make him go win the game? If he makes it at the end of the day, and we're sitting here saying Diego Pavia was getting nailed all night, he was on the run all night, and he still made play, like, that's going to be a hat tip thing, Don't make it easy on them, though. I think that's the key going into this game.
So a little bit of like, hey, maybe if you're like, I don't care about PFF grades and who knows what that even means, and I get it, frankly. Let's take a PFF stat that could be related to this a little bit. Keep in mind what you've seen from South Carolina, the offense. Hey, they protected Sellers enough? No, they haven't. But just to give you an idea, according to PFF, so far this year, Chris, it appears that, according to them, Sellers has been under pressure 30.6% of the time that he's dropped back. So a little over 30% of the time he drops back, he's under pressure. A little under 70% of the time he drops back, he has been kept clean, at least by however they would chart that thing up. Well, if you look at Vanderbilt, 35.4% percent of the time he's dropped back, he has been under pressure. So about 4 to 5 percentage points more, higher, that Pavia has been under pressure. But point being, both those guys have been under duress most of the time they've dropped back. Interestingly enough, to this point, Pavia has still been efficient, man. Like, he has still delivered the football. His grades as a passer under duress are actually almost identical to his grades on PFF when he's been kept clean. That is the most rare thing you see in football. Can he keep that up for 12 games? Most quarterbacks, it doesn't matter who they are. If you're Tom Brady, if you are consistently under duress, it messes you up over the long haul. Like, it keeps you from being – it's just – I know I'm not breaking news here, man, but it's hard to operate at that position when everything's clean. It is near impossible over an extended reps. You can do it for maybe a small sample size, but over a bigger sample size, it is near impossible. So maybe we're back with what we started with, Pavia versus Sellers. Who can deal with everything around them?
I think so. I mean, those are when you think about these two teams, where does your mind go? It goes to the quarterbacks. It goes to Sellers and Pavia. The other guys are the other, 21 guys on the field at any given time are going to play huge roles in that as well as to what happens. But, the quarterback who can make the most plays in this game is probably going to be the quarterback of the winning team. I think that's how it's going to go.
So along the same lines, as we close this thing out, lots of talk this offseason, man, about the wide receiver position for South Carolina. And I said pretty strongly, based on everything we've heard, like, I don't even think this is a concern anymore. Like, I think they're going to be much improved over what they were last year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think we can quite judge this group yet because the ball just has not been in the air for them enough. Like they haven't had enough opportunities yet. You may say, well, hey, are they open? Are they getting open? Is there separation? Maybe at times they're not. Have there been some drops? Of course, there have been some drops. This is a point Cole Kubelik made on his podcast this week. And I think I agree because it even kind of matches up a little bit with something we talked about way back in the offseason with Charles Power. We were talking about Nick Harbor. Even as much as Harbor has improved, as much as he's come along, is Harbor that true X receiver for you where you're saying, this is the guy on third downs we're dialing things up for. This is the guy who's going to have the complete route tree and is going to consistently, that can go catch 7-8 balls in a game. Maybe he is. I'm not saying he isn't. But maybe in a perfect world, maybe Donovan Murphy emerges as we've seen. We've seen the glimpses, man. Maybe he emerges. Maybe you get Mazio Bennett more involved as kind of that slack guy. He keeps coming on. Brian Rowe keeps coming on. And then what happens to Harbor? He kind of becomes that other outside receiver, that Z, you would say, that's lining up, not directly on the line of scrimmage. He gets a little bit more of a head start in terms of getting to full speed. He's stretching the field for you. He's running the posts like we saw, in the big catch against Virginia Tech. Now, he had some games last year, Chris, where he did catch a bunch of balls. Vandy was the one where he really, I think, started to get going. We saw him. Yep. I think there was a nice corner route where a comeback route out on the perimeter towards the sideline. He catches it, puts his shoulder down, runs right through the chest of a Vandy defender. And I said, man, I think Harbor is starting to build confidence. He looked really good in week 1. I thought in week 2 against SC State, there's maybe a couple balls where it still looked a little bit still work in progress, right? How much can this receiving core just steadily improve? Like, I think offense is a funny thing, man. Like, you almost don't always notice it. Like, if everybody is, like, making these little baby steps, the whole thing kind of elevates, and you almost, if you blink, you miss it. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, they're playing good offensive ball right now. Like, do you remember in the second half against SC State, the offense had kind of gotten going. They had the touchdown drive. Then there was like kind of on TV, it looked kind of like a deep over route to Harbor, or like a sail route. Like it was a long throw for Sellers across the field, and it was going towards the sideline, like completely away from Sellers is on the other hash. And he threw a rocket that missed. And I'm going, from my angle, is that just a miss by Sellers? Is Harbor quite where he was supposed to be? It almost looked like, and again, dude, I could not see the angles. I don't know if you remember the play I'm talking about.
I do. Yeah.
It almost looked like Harbor kind of misjudged where the ball was going to be a little bit. And it's kind of one of those things when it's a little bit off on all sides, it's just an incomplete pass, and you're going, man, that was a missed opportunity. But then when everybody, Sellers dials it in a little bit on his end, Harbor dials it in a little bit more on his end, and then what happens? You hit that play. Like, I think those are the things when coaches say things like, hey, we see the potential, we're close. And fans say things like, you had 3 straight 3-and-outs. How are you close? Like, those are the little things that are the difference in winning and losing. You have Mazio Bennett on a post down the middle of the field on the first play of the game. If you see him, there's good pass protection. There's no safety in the middle of the field. It is a 94-yard strike. Because we all know Sellers throws a deep ball, I think, as well as any Carolina quarterback I've ever seen. So those are like the little, what would you call it, like the in the balance plays that are the difference in being good and being bad on offense, I think. Absolutely.
And this is the week where you have to figure it out, right? You don't have any more time to workshop it. It's not going to be perfect. I don't think Carolina's, if they figure it out, they're going to go score 56 points this weekend. Nobody's saying that. I'm not saying that. But, there's a temptation, and I've seen this a lot. I'm not like bashing anybody, but Wes, I don't know about you. The majority of the conversation online, if you check Twitter, Insiders Forum, most of the conversation was offensive line after the game, after the SC State game. Every person I've talked to in person who I've seen in the last several days saw somebody at church last night. 2 people at church, 2 different people, 2 different times. They're going to get that offensive line fixed? Well, they need to, but again, those little things you're talking about, Wes, you just gave an example of 2 examples that were not offensive line related. So 100% the offensive line's got to play better, but you also have to hit those plays where you do have protection, because South Carolina could have an outstanding offensive line. They're going to give up some pressures this season. All of them are. You go watch college football, So it's all those things. I mean, I broke down every first-team offensive play versus SC State. Did I go through and log, here's an O-line problem. This play, missed a block. This play, got beat one-on-one. Yeah, there were several of those. But there were a lot of them where I'm like, there wasn't anything wrong from an O-line standpoint here. It was something else. So I think somebody said it earlier. I won't say it as strongly as that, as it was said. I think Travis, our guy, said it. People do default to O-line when it comes to the offense, and I get it. It's been a problem through 2 games, but there are other problems. So can you solve those? How well can you solve them? That's what you got to figure out.
Get 16 going, man. That would be, to me, that would be priority 1, 2, and 3 to start this game. Let him settle in. I think he is a guy kind of momentum based too. Like if you get him into the game early, let him hit some throws early on, he will show you the NFL quarterback that he is. If if it's a little bit shaky early, if you can't stay on the field, you're having to make one throw, then you're on the sideline. Come back for 3 downs, make 1 throw out of 3 calls, back on the sideline. Get the guy going. I love the tight end horizontal stuff, man. I think that's a great way to stretch the defense horizontally while also giving your quarterback some easy throws. And my guy Cole Kubelik, who I just always lean on watching all his content, he loves what they're doing with the tight ends too. Do you introduce Maurice Brown II a little bit more in the backfield this week? Maybe, little lead blocker type stuff. We've seen that a little bit in that H-back role. Maybe you lean on that a little bit more to try to get this running game going. There's a lot you can do. Promise you, everybody's out for Mike Shula right now. I know. The guy's been the coordinator full-time for 2 games now, 3 if you count the bowl. I'm willing to see what he can cook up. I don't think you can just brush an OC aside after 2 games. So let's see what happens. Let's close it out, Chris. We've talked about the game enough, so I'll just give my score here. I do think it's tight. I think it would take a big defensive play or a big special team score to get into the 30s potentially. I'm more thinking an in the 20s battle. I've gone back and forth, 24-21, 27-24. Let's split the difference. And
I like how you're doing this just right now, just workshopping it.
Let's you know what? Let's actually go 24-20. South Carolina Gamecocks win the game.
Okay. Here's where I've gone back and forth, Wes. How did you ever go back and forth this week? Like, Vandy?
Yeah, but I just I did. I mean, dude, here's the thing. Here's the secret. Nobody knows. The experts
really
do not and I don't know. I don't consider myself an expert. I'm just here doing my best, man. But if you ever notice, when people pick a game, inevitably people will go back and be like, "You freaking moron! How could you pick that?" But dude, it's football.
Yeah.
It is the most difficult thing to project in the world. Like, nobody actually knows when the margins are this tight.
Yeah.
So, dude, I ain't picking. Are you serious? I'm not picking South Carolina to lose at Vanderbilt. Like, that ultimately what it comes down to. If I was flying in as, from Mars or something, and you just said, "Hey, here's the two teams. Who do you think's going to win?" Yeah, maybe Vandy does win, but on GamecockCentral.com, I'm just going to be honest. I'm not picking Vanderbilt to beat South Carolina until I see it. I think I was in college last time it happened, so, and I'm old at this point, dude. So yeah,
True. No, I'm in the same boat with you. That's a good point. All right, so final preview for me, Wes. Your final thoughts are coming out tomorrow on Gamecock Central. Your piece, it'll be fleshed out. Mine normally on Thursday, doing Friday just because I had a couple other things today. Friday, I'll have that, keys, all those different things. When South Carolina has the ball, when Vandy has the ball. I'm filibustering a little bit. Vanderbilt 27, South Carolina 30. I did it backwards. Did anybody think, is Chris about to pick Vanderbilt? South Carolina 30, Vandy 27.
How close were you to picking Vandy?
I mean, the possibility entered my mind because, I think they're capable, and I think a lot of the stuff we've been talking about here, can South Carolina get from a point where they're scuffling on offense to some degree and take those smaller things, and there are several of them, and get them good enough this week to where they can go out and score 30 points, and maybe some of that special teams or defense, like you said, Wes, sets you up well for a quick score or scores outright. That's what I'm going with. I kind of came down to what you said. It's two close teams. It's two teams that I think right now are fairly close. It's at home. I don't frankly care that much about South Carolina's win streak. It's a new year. I tend to go more South Carolina has some guys, I think. I think 16 is going to be 16, and it's at home at night at Williams-Brice Stadium.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, the home field advantage aspect of this still weighs heavily in my mind.
Yep.
So we'll see. Robert doesn't like that you have Vandy scoring 27. Robert, again, it's football, man. Like even good defenses are going to have games where they give up, a higher point total. Not that that's some crazy point total. Maybe you have a short field because of a turnover. Maybe you give up a special teams touchdown, like you said. I mean, it's football. That doesn't even necessarily mean the defense is playing poorly.
I mean, look, any of us, I think, on this show, if we took a poll and said, was South Carolina's defense for real last year, we'd all say yes. They gave up 30 to Missouri last year. Couldn't stop the run at times. Gave up some big plays. So for me, I'm kind of
LSU, man. LSU went off in the second half.
That was a good South Carolina defense. I think Vanderbilt has a pretty darn solid offense. Now we'll see. Maybe we leave this game and South Carolina has another good defensive performance, and then we're going to be doubling down on this defense is pretty doggone good, right?
Hey, we didn't talk any recruiting, but y'all go check that out. On GamecockCentral.com. Huge weekend. Honestly, nice offer or visit list there for South Carolina with 5-star guys, flip guys, committed guys. Again, go check it out. GamecockCentral.com. We are out. Appreciate you, Chris. I am Wes. Appreciate everybody for hopping on too and joining us. And man, y'all enjoy the game. It's going to be a fun one. If you're going to the game, be safe, but enjoy an awesome atmosphere at Williams-Brice Stadium. Chris and I will be back on Monday. Good, bad, or ugly, we'll be here to break it down. And